All righty, welcome back to the episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Wednesday, January 18th, and today we're going to be talking about a few guys. OU picked up a commit in the transfer portal in Blake Smith, and then we're going to be talking about a couple of transfers, or a couple, not transfers, excuse me, a couple offers that Oklahoma's handed out for 2024 guys, and a guy in the 2025 class. They are handing out offers left and right, identifying talent. So there's a handful of guys we'd like to talk about. We're not going to cover everyone. We're slowly but surely going to get through as many as we can. So let's start with Blake Smith. So Blake Smith, played at Texas A&M coming in the 2020 class, enrolled. He was an early enrollee for Texas A&M. He is coming to Oklahoma as a tight end, transferring in. He's 6'4", 255 pounds. He had offers from Alabama, Florida State, Miami, Michigan, Ohio State. So he had significant offers. In his Texas A&M career, he only ended up recording 2 catches for a yard. So nothing on the stat sheet's going to wow you. But he's a guy that's going to come in, and I believe is going to be provide some veteran leadership. Of course, I mean, he's been in college for a handful of years now, since in the 2020. He's a great blocking tight end and someone that comes in with some good size that Oklahoma needs behind a Stogner or for certain packages, maybe like a Daniel Parker. Daniel Parker came in and from Missouri, and he wasn't someone that wowed you as far as his offensive numbers, but he came in as a great blocker. What do you think about Blake Smith and the implications of his addition to the team?
He's definitely just taking Daniel Parker's role in the blocking necessity that you need out of a tight end. I mean, Stogner, not that he can't block, but you definitely got some packages where you have 2 tight ends out there, and one of them's going to have to stick around and block while the other one can, block for a little bit and then go out for a route or just straight up go try to catch the ball. We'll see what ends up happening. He definitely just doesn't, like you said, with the output that he had at A&M, seems like a stretch to believe that he would be an offensive weapon just from what he's produced so far. Could that change? Possibly. But again, with Austin Stogner coming back, I want to be a little bit better of a pass catcher than Blake. Big body, can block. Maybe not perfected, but got better at blocking while he was at South Carolina. It's going to be tough for him to get snaps as a pass catcher, but he's got to be ready because at this point his services were needed at Oklahoma because of the youth that we have behind Stogner. Because it was pre Blake's commitment, it was Stogner, then we had Llewellyn and Caden Helms, and then we'll have Cade McIntyre later on. But those are 3 really young guys. The coaches probably feel like they need to get a little bit more muscle on them, a little bit more strength, because Caden, coming out of high school, mainly a pass catcher, really just a huge wide receiver and how he was used at his high school. So going to need to add some muscle and, work on the blocking. Jason Llewellyn, I guess, looks a little bit more like a all-around tight end. But again, going from high school to college, not the easiest transition, especially when you're asking a guy that plays tight end to try to pack on as much weight as possible, still be strong enough to try to move a defensive lineman, but quick enough to go out and be effective in the pass game. Not the easiest thing to do, so I could understand why they feel like they need some depth, but hopefully one of these young guys can get an opportunity at some point, because it is, I guess you can say, it's a little concerning that they felt like the 2 guys that were there last year still weren't fully prepared to maybe be mainly a blocking tight end, even if it is for a year, or have 2 pass catching tight ends that can block solid. Kind of like I know you as a Patriots fan probably remember more than anyone else, Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. That was an unstoppable duo back in their day before Aaron did what he did. But you gotta, if OU had that opportunity, I think they should take advantage. But if Blake came in, that means they feel like they need more help at that position.
I agree. I mean, there must be more to it. They must feel like they need an immediate contributor and a body that's ready to play day one come the 2023 season. So kind of came out of left field, not someone that I was necessarily expecting, but at the end of the day, if that's what they need and they need a blocking tight end for certain packages and maybe someone that can be developed into something, with a greater role, then you got to take them. So again, never going to be upset when Oklahoma picks up another transfer guy. More depth, more competition is always good. So moving on to discussing the 2024 offers, the first guy I want to talk about is Tavares Banks, or TJ Banks. He's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He's a 2024 four-star safety, 6'1", 190 pounds. And 247 has him listed as a safety. And I will say that from what I've seen and the highlights I've watched and the tape I've watched, he is a two-way player. He plays all over the field. He's played corner, he's played safety, he plays running back, he plays wide receiver, he's a kickoff returner. So he is all over the field, all three phases of the field. So a guy that's extremely versatile. And to also look at this 247 page, you can see that Alabama, obviously, he's in their backyard. His primary recruiter, one of his primary recruiters, or it's the primary recruiter in secondary, his primary is Bill O'Brien. And Bill O'Brien is an offensive coordinator for Alabama as it stands today. So obviously Alabama sees him potentially maybe on the offensive side. I'm not sure where Oklahoma sees him per se as a defensive back or as a offensive player. But either way, that Jay Valai is going to be heavily involved in this recruitment, considering his connections to the Alabama area, being a coach at Alabama. And I feel like that whether he's offense or defense, which it's tough for me to say, I'd imagine he's going to be recruited as a defensive back, but I don't know that for sure. I would imagine Jay Valai is going to be his primary recruiter. And this would be a big time addition if Oklahoma, I'm jumping way far into, ahead, but if Oklahoma can go into Tuscaloosa and get a guy like him, like Banks, and get him to commit and go out to Oklahoma, that's a win. That is, I look at Makari Vickers. I know Vickers isn't from Alabama, but I look at Makari Vickers as like the big time win against Alabama. I know we got Peyton Bowen and everything, but Makari Vickers, getting him was extremely impressive. Oklahoma went head to head against Alabama. And I think Oklahoma will go head to head for Banks as well. What do you think? You're muted.
My bad. It's going to take some work to try to get in his recruitment. Like you said, him being from Tuscaloosa, tough to say no to the team that is right down the road from you. Probably grew up a fan of the Crimson Tide, and it's Alabama. They're always good. All people always think that they should be competing for a national championship, and sometimes they prove that they are the best team in the country, more times than not in recent history, and probably in Tavares' lifetime. So definitely not going to be an easy recruitment to try to get in on. And I saw that he was just at Tennessee for their junior day. So being in the SEC seems to be something that's appealing to him. That's something that's a plus for Oklahoma since we're moving, but it's got to be, I would assume that he is going to be a defensive back, since Jay Valai is the one that he had a conversation with. I know that Jay Valai is in on a lot of recruitments, not just for the defensive backs or the defensive side of the ball, but given the fact that he's the one that sent the offer, they probably see him as a DB. Like you said, in high school, he plays both ways. On defense, he plays corner and safety. Dude is athletic. He's long. He high points the ball very well. I think when you see him intercept the ball, it's not like he's just cutting off the pass and getting in the passing lane. He's going up and getting it, at least from what I've seen. So that the dude that makes big plays, we'll see how this develops, because for the most part, the recruiting for this class is going to happen, at least for the Oklahoma side, this summer. When we talked to Parker Thune in the past, he mentioned he thought that Oklahoma might have, one or two guys by the time January ends. And January is not over yet, so definitely still possible. He figured that going into the summer, we might have more like a 5 or 6 guys committed by then. At this point, that doesn't seem like it could happen, because these kids are starting school again. I know they're going to have more time and they're going to go to junior days, and clearly Oklahoma's going to have a couple events for those guys. But if they want to have 5 or 6 guys committed by the time summer comes around, they're going to have to start putting their foot on the gas and getting these guys to close their recruitments and get them to commit.
Yeah, and I talked about Makari Vickers as far as his recruitment is similar, like going head to head against Alabama, but I see him being very similar to Makari Vickers because Vickers coming out of high school 6'2", 192. Banks is 6'1", 190. They both played offense and defense. Both can play safety or corner. Seems oddly similar, does it not?
Yeah,
It's like
very
a
athletic,
type.
long guy. Yeah. And I think that's kind of just what they're going after now, right? They're going after big, long wide receivers and DBs. They're tired of having guys out there that you're going to have a matchup nightmare when you go up against guys like Quentin Johnson once, probably more than once at this point. It feels like the Big 12 has 6'2" wide receivers at every school other than Oklahoma, at least at play. And when you go
Yeah.
up again in the SEC, you're going to want some length because they're explosive in that conference.
Yeah. So exciting. I mean, again, very early, not saying anything's imminent, but hopefully Oklahoma can hop into his recruitment and see what ends up happening. So, before we go on to the next guy, I just want to say we would like you, if you've been here often, haven't been here, this is your first time, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. And remember, if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to leave us a review. It helps us out a lot. Our Twitter's nearly at 3,100 subscribers. Our Instagram's like at 1,300 or followers or whatever. And then we are 10 subscribers away from 5,600 as we're recording this. So help us get us there, move on to get past 5,600, hopefully by the end of the week. So again, but if you're already subscribed and you comment on the video, we really appreciate that. So moving on to the next guy is Xavier Porter, and he was actually offered, well, at least he made it publicly announced Tuesday evening. So, I mean, literally, this is an extremely fresh offer. Porter is from Tampa Catholic, and I have to give you credit. You pointed this out that this is Lewis Carter's high school. So obviously Oklahoma's going back to the well on him. 6'2", 265, 3-star defensive lineman. I think a guy that is potentially underrated and someone that could rise. If he has a great senior season, he could see a jump. He's played a little bit as a freshman. He played sophomore and junior year. He ended up accruing 6 sacks, 80 total tackles as a defensive lineman at Tampa Catholic. So a school that obviously Oklahoma's got connections there. Lewis Carter can put on his recruiting hat now, trying to get into that South Florida. Put in some good roots there. So what do you think about Porter? A guy that someone that Oklahoma really, it'd be a great addition. He just visited Florida State. Seems like Florida State is one of his top schools naturally. Being, in the state of Florida, he plays track and field he competes in track and field. So he's a versatile kid. He's got some good offers. Auburn is another one, Oklahoma. He's been picking up a few offers, including Michigan as well. What do you think?
Yeah, so I was looking up some of his highlights from this last season. One, he's a junior at 263, 275. That's a huge person. Tough to, I guess, really. Since he's a junior, that he still has some growing to do. Going to develop a lot, but from what he put out, he is really smart. He doesn't just try to bull rush and go after the quarterback every single play. There was one play in his highlight tape from his junior year. He was trying to rush the passer, but he recognized that it was a screen pretty quickly, dropped back, and ended up getting the interception as an interior defensive lineman during that play. So dude is versatile, smart, understands where he needs to be to make a play. Definitely, if he keeps growing at this pace, gonna be really nice to have in the interior of any defensive line. If it's not Oklahoma, I'm sure schools like Georgia and Alabama are going to be knocking on his door if they haven't already. So hopefully Oklahoma gets that pipeline solidified to Tampa Catholic, from Tampa Catholic to Norman, but it's not going to be an easy thing to do when you have schools like Georgia and Alabama going after guys that are this big. Then you've got the in-state schools like Florida, Miami, UCF. I mean, pretty much every Florida school is going to want to get after this guy. So again, another reason why I understand Venable's philosophy when it comes to recruiting. He wants these guys to take as many visits as possible and really get as much out of the experience as they can. Hopefully that experience comes a little quicker than last year, so that he can start locking in defensive linemen specifically. I think that's really the need that this team has at this point in the long term, because you definitely have guys, and they brought in good players this class with PJ and Derek and Taylor Wine. I'm sure I'm missing someone, but you want these bigger defensive linemen to come in that already have some pretty big heft to them, and really just have to add on like 10, 15 pounds rather than having to try to get them to gain 25, 30 pounds over a year and try to get them to play a little bit earlier.
Now you bring up a good point, and being able to get those guys to the playing weight that you want, and that pipeline from Tampa Catholic to Oklahoma, it seems like obviously things are moving in the right direction. And anytime you get into a South Florida school that produces D1 talent, that's always a good feather to put in your hat. So someone that I think Oklahoma has a legitimate shot at. I mean, obviously, I think anyone that they offer is a legitimate shot, just because they're not just handing out offers just to hand out offers. They must feel like they must have an opportunity. And obviously Lewis Carter being there, and they've probably already been scouting him and talking with Porter for a while before this offer even came. You know, they being on those visits, they weren't just seeing Lewis Carter there. So moving on to the next guy, and this is a guy I'm excited for all these kids. I mean, I'm really excited about Banks, but this next guy, Braden Platt, 6'2", 240 pounds, according to 247. He might be bigger. I'm not sure. He's from Yelm, Washington. He's a 2024 4-star. Now, his composite ranking is number 276 overall and the number 22 linebacker in the class. But 247's ranking of him is the number 78 overall player and the number 9 linebacker in the class and the number 2 player in the state of Washington. He is listed as a linebacker, and that's just going to be his primary position. But he is a guy that is a do-it-all guy for his high school right now. He plays running back and he plays linebacker. So as a running back, and I want everyone to realize that he had 765 yards and 18 touchdowns. He played in 7 games. 7 games, 18 touchdowns, 765 yards as a running back. He had 41 total tackles, 1 sack. I believe he had 9 tackles for loss. A guy that obviously is extremely versatile. He can catch out of the backfield, had 160 yards receiving and a touchdown. So he really accounted for 925 yards, 19 total touchdowns, and then played linebacker. And running back is not even his primary position. So a guy that is a run stopper. He can play sideline to sideline. Once he gets your hands on you, or his hands on you, you can't escape. He has the potential, and I think as he plays his senior season, goes to more camps and whatever, 7-on-7s and things like that, I think he has an opportunity to go up in the rankings this year. I mean, he's already put together some great film. I'm glad Oklahoma threw their hat in on him. I'm not saying that this is going to be a kid that Oklahoma's going to land, because you're going into Washington and you're going into Duck country and you're dealing with Dan Lanning with the Ducks, and even USC, West Coast, UCLA. I mean, Chip Kelly's putting together a solid program. What do you think about him? I mean, he is a guy that he could come in and compete and play probably as a redshirt freshman, and we need linebackers. My gosh.
Yes, and watching his highlight tape, watching what some of the things he posts, like his workouts, and him being named as a what was he, a junior to the first team, to Max Prep's first team defensive team. Pretty good. You got to be a pretty good linebacker. He kind of reminds me of Jaren Kanak in a way. Both super athletic guys, workhorse for their high school when it comes to production on both the offense and the defense. Both played running back in high school. Both excel at playing linebacker at in the high school level. I think the only difference is Jared Kanek played a couple quarterback snaps in high school, but Braden's time's not over. He could get a couple quarterback snaps, get some QB sneak touchdowns in there as well. But he's definitely a guy that could be impactful. Like you said, he plays sideline to sideline, but he's so physical and is disciplined when it comes to playing the run game that it's not something that you'll have to, those instincts are there. Maybe fine tuning him is something that the coaches will need to do because, again, going from high school to college, very big, it's a pretty big gap there to try to close. But it's possible to do it when you have a guy like Brent Venables there coaching the linebackers. I think that's going to be something that will play in Oklahoma's favor. But we'll see what happens again. I think that the biggest hurdle here is having to go to Washington to recruit him, and him pulling him out of that area of the country. It is going to be very tough to try to get him over a place like Oregon, maybe even Oregon State if he really wants to stay at, in the Northwest, Pacific part of the region of the country. And if he wants to leave but still be a little bit closer to home or be on the coast, you still have schools like USC, UCLA, Stanford. I know they're not big on recruiting, but they can always pull one off. They almost had a 4-star tight end for a little bit until he decommitted, so they can recruit. At the end of the day, linebacker is a need. I think everything in the front seven of the defense is going to be a need for a couple of years until they can really solidify and show that they can develop them in Oklahoma. Not that these coaches haven't done it elsewhere, but it's going to be those are going to be positions of need for both depth and the starting rotation there for probably the 23 and the 24 season. Hopefully it's a little bit more solidified and we see what the future can be, but you're still going to need a little bit more help here in the future.
Oh yeah, you definitely will need some more help. But a guy that I think at least Oklahoma, with Danny Stutzman playing well, and obviously you got Kenneth Murray if you look back, and I think you're going to see a jump on the field. I think they're going to be able to at least make it interesting for him. And maybe if Oklahoma can get him out for a visit, I'd feel better about him. But I just think it's going to be hard to go in the Pacific Northwest. Not saying it's impossible, but I'm glad Oklahoma issued his offer to him. So the last guy I wanted to bring up and discuss is a 2025 guy. And I know we're getting way out there, but I tell you what, whenever we started talking about 2023 guys, I thought that was forever away. And here we are. We're already pretty much past everything. So 2025 will be here before we know it. And Oklahoma offered a couple days ago a guy by the name of Landon Rink, 2025. No rank because there's not many guys that have been evaluated in the 25 class, but according to 247, he's 6'2", 250 pounds. He is a guy that is extremely versatile. He is a Longhorn legacy, so initially in my mind I'm thinking, well, it's Colton Bosick type deal that maybe Oklahoma can get into this, but the problem is he's a legacy, but you never know. He might want to be able to pave his own way. But Oklahoma's come in and offered him, according to his 247 profile. Texas has offered him SMU and Texas Tech, so Oklahoma threw their name in the hat pretty much later than everyone else at this point. But he's a guy that, according to Max Preps, he's put together some solid seasons as a freshman and sophomore, playing in Cypress, Texas. So he's playing at an extremely high level of 6A football, and he's starting and playing as a freshman and a sophomore. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. Hopefully Oklahoma can get him up for like a junior day or even another visit at another time. My expectations are low, but I think they aren't offering many 2025 kids. And if you're offering this early, you must see something in them. What do you think?
The last part, they've got to see something in them. 2020, we're seeing a lot of 2024 offers, and they sneak in a couple of these 2025 ones, and it's hard to keep track of them. But Landon Rink is explosive. Like you said, he's 6'3", 250, so he's pretty light, but he's also just a sophomore. He just finished a sophomore season. He's got 2 more years to grow, eat more, just let it naturally just get bigger as a person. And by the time he gets to being 18, he could be 6'3", 6'4", and be able to carry 275 pounds and look still like a Lane Johnson. Still very athletic, could be rocking a six-pack and be nearly 300 pounds. Like, that's insane. Landon's an athlete. Definitely going to be tough. The fact that he's a legacy at Texas, that as soon as you said that, the first thing that came to my mind was also Colton Bosick. Would hate to have a similar situation where he commits to Oklahoma and then that starts, flirting with Texas and ends up going back to his dad's alma mater. But at the end of the day, Oklahoma's showing that they're not really scared to go up against anyone, even if these players do have connections to these programs, either from being a legacy or because they're, the school's in their backyard. They're going to compete to get the guys that they want. If they end up getting them is always a different story, because as I always say, that recruiting is not a perfect science. If there was a perfect formula on how to recruit every single player that you want, every highly ranked player that a school could potentially want and need, they would do it. And it would still be impossible to do because someone could come up with some different method that would be even better. At the end of the day, getting in early is going to be big. I mean, we saw that it paid big time for A&M. I know NIL was a big thing with the David Hicks situation, but they were one of the first to offer David Hicks. They were one of the first to start recruiting David Hicks, and that was one of the things that David liked for A&M. Being in as early as we are with Landon, hopefully that's a situation that we find ourselves in where his relationships with our defensive line coach, and hopefully it's still Todd Bates and Chavis when his time comes. But if it's just Chavis, if it's just Todd Bates, if it's someone different, hopefully that relationship being with Brent Venables is strong enough that by the time he has to make his commitment, he feels comfortable going against the grain that his dad might want or his family might want, and him going to Texas and playing for the rival and being a winner at Oklahoma.
Definitely, if you want to win, you got to come to Oklahoma. I mean, he's got to know that. I mean, when he's grown up, it's been Oklahoma pretty much dominating. Obviously, this year didn't go Oklahoma's way, but a guy that plays at 6A level of football, has a total of 20 tackles for loss, like 6 sacks as a sophomore in Texas State football at 6A. You've got to be good. And his dad was a defensive lineman, so obviously I'm sure his dad has been a big influence, helping him, giving him pointers. I mean, not everyone has a dad that played at that level of football, so he's probably ahead of the game in that scenario. So I mean, I'm excited about Landon Rink, but again, my expectations are low. But again, like you said, if you get in early enough and kids want to pave their own way, you never know. I mean, Colton Vosick thought he wanted to pave his own way, but it wasn't for him. There's nothing to say that Landon Rink couldn't be that. And if Texas has a bad season, Steve Sarkisian loses his job potentially, or there's coaching changes, you never know. Oklahoma could be right there for the, to be the landing spot for him. So not far, Cypress, Texas. Oklahoma's throwing their name in the hat, and for a guy that could end up being one of the best players in the state of Texas.
And we are the first school outside of Texas to offer. So we're really, I know it might not be the biggest thing, but they're trying. They're trying. What's important is they're trying to make their presence more felt by Texas and A&M and SMU and Texas Tech. Because if Oklahoma can start gaining more momentum and becoming one of the hotter teams in the state of Texas when it comes to recruiting, it's going to make it much more difficult. A&M's going to hate it. They're probably going to feel like back in their Big 12 days where they would get some guys, but not everyone they wanted, because OU and Texas just kept taking the better guys from the state of Texas.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see. It's definitely something to watch. Do you have any final thoughts regarding any of these guys or the addition of Blake Smith?
No, I think the end of video challenge, we're gonna do something off of college football. We're gonna go to the NFL. Super wild card weekend just happened. I know we kind of talked about it in one of our last videos because the Viking season ended in devastating fashion because Kirk Cousins doesn't know that you should pass it further than the sticks when you're on 4th and 8 and your last possession of the football game. Who would have thunk it? The Dolphins for Brandon at Skylar Thompson could have won, but clock management, impossible thing to do sometimes. And the Patriots just suck this year. So, what was your favorite game of the weekend? I would say for me, outside of the Vikings game, because that was a devastation, I would say it was the Jags game. The fact that they came back, Trevor Lawrence looked like ass to start the game, and then managed to keep his composure and end up winning the game. Who knows? They might make some noise in the AFC. I think they play the Chiefs, so it's going to be a tough game too, but not impossible. The Chiefs defense is not known to lock people down.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously easy to pick that the Jags game because I mean that game, it seemed all but over, and then Trevor Lawrence put it together, and Jags came right back into it. Buffalo to me looks vulnerable, but it's a divisional opponent, so I don't want to I guess, overreact. So it'll be interesting to see what Buffalo does this weekend with Cincinnati coming to town, which is really unfortunate for Cincinnati because I think Cincinnati would have beaten Buffalo if obviously DeMar Hamlin didn't have his medical issue. So unfortunately, Cincinnati's having to go on the road. I think Cincinnati beats Buffalo, but I think it's a really close game. So a lot of great games, not many blowouts. Obviously, the Cowboys blew the Buccaneers out, and then the Seahawks got blown out. But other than that, all the other games were great. So you made it this far, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review on there. Helps us out a lot, and we will catch you guys next time.